Well, hello. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. I am Menesong, a lewd, degen, outdoor, and professional multiverse wizard specializing in world building and Waifusmith. Now, floating by my shoulder is Grammary, a succubus who's always open to gain more acolytes. But the milking session is for after the stream because right now it's time for more reading. And today we'll be continuing The Hobbit. We are on chapter 3. A short rest. What happened so far was just that our friendly little lovable Bilbo Baggins was merely recruited, almost against his will, to an adventure. An adventure that some part of him dreaded, and part of him could not stop from joining. Now, thank you for the first memo, Boomy. Congrats, you get a whole night with Grammar, where you can do anything you want. Remember, she's pretty good with illusions. Now, let me take a sip of water. I was running a little bit late today, so I had to quickly eat some stuff, finish my organization, and then run back here. Also drink my coffee, because I forgot to drink my coffee early. So I am slightly a little bit of breath before I start. Now, let me see. We have this thing playing in the background. I always need to take a moment to adjust the audio levels to be perfect. I think they are nice enough. Yeah, they feel nice enough, at least on my ears. It's always a little bit different compared to what you guys hear, but I think I get like a good idea of the sound levels. I really do. The one thing that I like, that I always like making sure it's okay, is the sound level, is the sound balance. Is the level balance. Okay, let's see, pages here. Oh, let's just start. In the last chapter, they met with a bunch of trolls, a little band, and they almost all got killed and eaten because they were rather silly approaching the encampment without being able to see very well. But thankfully Gandalf was there. Gandalf came back just in the nick of time to fool the trolls into arguing, because trolls are not exactly the martyrs race. So they argued until morning, and when the sun hit their faces, they turned into stone, because that's a thing that happens with trolls. I didn't know, actually. Let me take a quick look. Troll Wikipedia. No, let's do this on the actual. Let's just do this on the actual page over here. Troll Wikipedia. No, that's kind of troll. Portuguese, please. What is it? The Norse mythology. Well, in isolated areas of rocks, mountains, or caves. And are rarely helpful. Okay. Here's variant. Blah blah blah. There's nothing here about them. How about sun? Control F, please. Sun. Oops. Sun. Oh wait, which is it? Landmarks which at times may be explained as formed from a troll exposed to sunlight. Oh. Particular landmark. Like big rocks, they call it. This big rock came to be because it's a troll that was exposed to sunlight. Not just... Yeah, this is actually an interesting thing, because you see a rock in the middle of nowhere, like a big jutting rock, or maybe not even just not just one rock, like a little mountain of rocks or something like that. Like, how do you explain that? It looks particularly weird and out of place, you know, in the middle of a forest, but these things happen. So the explanation was they were once straws that turn into stone upon sunlight. That is an interesting. I like that sort of thing. And a curious, whimsical explanation for stuff. Or peculiarities, particularities. No, peculiarities, I think, of your terrain, of your environment. But anyway, enough digression. Let's actually start reading. Chapter 3: A Short Rest. They did not sing or tell stories that day, even though the weather improved. Nor the next day, nor the day after. They had begun to feel that danger was not far away on either side. They camped under the stars, and their horses had more to eat than they had, for there was plenty of grass. I need to follow with my mouth. But there was not much in their bags, even with what they had got from the trolls. One morning, they forded a river at a wide, shallow place full of the noise of stones and foam. The far bank was steep and slippery. When they got to the top of it, leading their ponies, they saw that the great mountains had marched down very near to them. Already they seemed only a day's easy journey from the feet of the nearest. Dark and dreary it looked, though there were patches of sunlight on its brown sides, and behind its shoulders the tips of snow peaks gleamed. "Is that the mountain?" asked Bilbo in a solemn voice, looking at it with round eyes. He had never seen a thing that looked so big before. "Of course not," said Polly. "That is only the beginning of the Misty Mountains. You have got to get through, or over, or under those somehow before you can come into the wilderland beyond. And it is a deal of a way, even from the other side of them, to the lonely mountain in the east, where Smog lies on our treasure." "Oh," said Bilbo. Just at the moment he felt more tired than he ever remembered feeling before. He was thinking once again of his comfortable chair before the fire, in his favorite sitting room in his Hobbit hole, and of a kettle singing. Not for the last time. Oh, almost skipped a page. Now Gandalf led the way. "We must not miss the road, or we shall be done for," he said. "We need food for one thing, and rest in reasonable safety. Also, it is very necessary to tackle the Misty Mountains by the proper path, or else you will get lost in them. Have to come back and start at the beginning again, if you ever get back at all." They asked him where he was making for, and he answered, "You are come to the very edge of the wild, as some of you may know. Hidden somewhere ahead of us is the far valley of Rivendell, where Elrond lives in the last homely house. I sent a message by my friends, and we are expected." That sounded nice and comforting, but they had not got there yet, and it was not so easy as it sounds to find the last homely house west of the mountains. There seemed to be no trees and no valleys and no hills to break the ground in front of them. Only one vast slope going slowly up and up to meet the feet of the nearest mountain. A wide land the color of heather and crumbling rock, with patches and slashes of grass green and moss green showing where water might be. Really like how he uses a lack of coma to make long running sentences. And color. And fabric. What the fuck is heather? White land the color of heather and crumbling rock purple? And what's the color of crumbling rock? What would the color be? Brown, I guess? No, gray? Heather. This. Okay. Marion, please. What is Heather? Heat of northern alpine regions that has small crowded sessile leaves and racemes. Tiny, usually purplish pink flowers. Oh. Oh, is that a tree? Heat. Wait. Paluna vulgaris, what's this? Oh. Purple and gray. Okay. Interesting description. Okay, where was I? A wide land called of heather and grumbly rock with patches and slashes of grass green and moss green showing where water might be. Okay, so basically a wasteland except for where there might be water. With a few flowers in the middle. Second. I should type a little something on the side over here. Morning passed. Afternoon came. But in all the silent waste there was no sign of any dwelling. They were growing anxious, for they saw now that the house might be hidden almost anywhere between them and the mountain. They came on unexpected valleys, narrow with steep sides, that opened suddenly at their feet, and they looked down, surprised to see trees below them and running water at the bottom. There were gullies that they could almost leap over, but very deep with waterfalls in them. There were dark ravines that one could neither jump over nor climb into. There were bogs, some of them green pleasant places to look at, with flowers growing bright and tall. But a pony that walked there with a pack on its back would never have come out again. It was indeed a much wider lane from the floor to the mountains than ever you would have guessed. Bilbo was astonished. The only path was marked with white stones, some of which were small, and others were half covered with moss or heather. Although it was a very slow business following the track, even guided by Gandalf, who seemed to know his way about pretty well. One more thing. Let me set up my laptop on the side. Where's like to have it here? Forgot to turn it on today. I do have always a lot of screens online over here. No, and forgot. Okay, now I think I haven't forgot anything. Moving on. His head and beard walked this way and that as he looked for the stones, and they followed his lead. But they seemed no nearer to the end of the search when the day began to fail. Tea time had long gone by, and it seemed supper time would soon do the same. There were moths fluttering about, and the light became very dim, for the moon had not risen. Bilbo's pony began to stumble over roots and stones. They came to the edge of a steep fall in the ground so suddenly Gandalf's horse nearly slipped down the slope. "Here it is at last!" he called, and the others gathered around him and looked over the edge. They saw a valley far below. They could hear the voice of hurrying water in a rocky bed at the bottom. The scent of trees was in the air, and there was a light on the valley side across the water. Bilbo never forgot the way they slithered and slipped in the dusk down the steep, zigzag path into the secret valley of Rivendell. The air grew warmer as they got lower, and the smell of the pine trees made him drowsy. But every now and again he nodded and nearly fell off, or bumped his nose on the pony's neck. Their spirits rose as they went down and down. The trees changed to birch and oak, and there was a comfortable feeling in the twilight. The last green had almost faded out of the grass when they came at length to an open glade not far above the banks of the stream. It smells like a house, thought Bilbo, and he looked up at the stars. They were burning bright and blue. Just then and there came a burst of song like ladders in the trees. Oh god, more poetry. Wait, this song, this background music is not good enough for the poetry. How about Elwyn Forest? I think this is more gentle. Luptas. Oh, what are you doing? And where are you going? Your ponies need chewing. The river is rolling. Oh, tra-la-la-la-lay. You're down in the valley. Oh, what are you seeking? And where are you making? The are reeking. The bannocks are baking. Oh, lily-lolly. The valley is jolly. Ha ha. Oh, where are you going? With birds all a-wagging. No knowing, no knowing what brings Mr. Baggins and Bally and Dwelling down into the valley in June, haha. Oh, will you be staying or will you be flying? Your pawns are straying, the daylight is dying. The fly would be folly, the stay would be jolly, and listen and hark to the end of the dark to our tune, haha. To be honest, I have no idea if I'm reading this poetry in a, like, quote-unquote correct way. But I'm trying to have fun with it. And not exactly I'm a very musically inclined person. So it's not like I have any knowledge of what I'm doing. So they laughed and sang in the trees. And pretty far nonsense, I dare say you think it. Not that they would care. They would only laugh all the more if you told them so. They were elves, of course. Soon Bilbo caught glimpses of them as the darkness deepened. He loved elves, though he seldom met them. But he was a little frightened of them too. Dwarves don't get on well with them. Even decent enough dwarves like Thorin and his friends think them foolish, which is a very foolish thing to think, or get annoyed with them. For some elves tease them and laugh at them, and most of all at their beards. Well, well, said a voice. Just look! Bilbo the Hobbit on a pony, my dear, isn't it delicious? Most astonishingly wonderful. Then off they went into another song as ridiculous as the one I have written down in full. A last one, a tall young fellow, came out from the trees and bowed to Gandalf. Welcome to the valley, he said. Thank you, said Thorin a bit. Thank you, said Thorin a bit gruffly. But Gandalf was already off his horse and among the elves, talking merrily with them. You are a little out of your way, said the elf. That is, if you are making for the only path across the water into the house beyond. Will you set you right? Would you have best get on foot until you are over the bridge? Are you going to stay a bit and sing with us? Or will you go straight on? Supper's preparing over there, he said. I can smell the wood fires for the cooking. Tired as he was, Bilbo would have liked to stay a while. Elvish singing is not a thing to miss. In June under the stars, not if you care for such things. Also, he would like to have a few private words with these people that seemed to know his names and all about them, although he had seen them before. He thought their opinions of his adventure might be interesting. Elves know a lot and are wondrous folk for news. They know what is going on among the peoples of the land. Quick was what follows. Oh, quicker. Let me turn on the music just a little bit. Hang on. I think it was good actually. I need to listen to my own voice a little bit more to get what I do right. To reflect on what I do right and what I do wrong. It feels like trying to speak a little bit too softly. I was listening to myself for a bit. It feels like trying to speak a bit too softly makes the mic almost not pick up all of my words. So I need to think more thoroughly how I want to do this sort of stream. Anyway, let's just move on. Tired as he was, Bilbo would have liked to stay a while. Elvish singing is not a thing to miss. In June under the stars, not if you care for such things. Also, he would have liked to have a few private words with these people that seemed to know his names and all about it, although he had never seen them before. He thought their opinions of those adventures might be interesting. Elves know a lot and are on those folks for news. They know what's going on among the peoples of the land as quick as water flows or quicker. But the dwarves were all for supper as soon as possible just then, and would not stay. On they all went, leading their ponies, till they were brought to a good path and so at last to the very brink of the river. It was flowing fast and noisily, as mountain streams do of a summer evening, when sun has been all day on the snow far up above. There was only a narrow bridge of stone without a parapet, as narrow as a pony could well walk on, and over that they had to go, slow and careful, one by one, each leading his pony by the bridle. The elves had brought bright lanterns to the shore, and they sang a merry song as the party went across. "Don't dip your beard in the foam, father," he cried to Thorin, who has bent almost onto his hands and knees. "It is long enough without watering it." "Mind Bilbo doesn't eat all the cakes," they call. "He's too fat to get through keyholes yet." "Hush, hush, good people, and good night," said Gandalf, who came last. "Valleys have ears, and so elves have over merry tongues. Good night." And so at last they all came to the last homely house, and found its doors flung wide. Now, it is a strange thing, but things that are good to have and days that are good to spend are soon told about, and not much to listen to. All things that are uncomfortable, palpitating, and even gruesome may make a good tale, and take a deal of telling anyway. They stayed long in that house, 14 days at least, and they found it hard to leave. Bilbo would gladly have stopped there for ever and ever, even supposing a wish would have taken him right back to his hobbit hole without trouble. Yet, there is little to tell about their stay. The master of the house was an elf friend, one of those people whose fathers came into the strange stories before the beginning of history. The wars of the evil goblins and the elves and the first man in the north. In those days of our tale, there were still some people who had both elves and heroes of the north for ancestors, and Aaron, the master of the house, was their chief. He was noble and as fair in face as an elf lord, strong as a warrior, as wise as a wizard, as venerable as the king of dwarves, and as kind as summer. He comes into many tales, but his part in the story of Bilbo's great adventure is only a small one, though important, as you will see if we ever get to the end of it. His house was perfect, whether you like food or sleep or work or storytelling, or singing, or just sitting and thinking bass, or a pleasant mixture of them all. Evil things did not come into that valley. I wish I had time to tell you, even a few of the tales or one or two of the songs that I heard in that house. All of them funny as well. You were fresh and strong in a few days there. Their clothes were mended as well as their bruises, their tempers and their hopes. Their bags were filled with food and provisions light to carry, but strong to bring them over the mountain passes. Their plans were improved with the best advice. So the time came to Midsummer Eve, and they were to go on again with the early sun on midsummer morning. Aaron knew all about runes of every kind. That day, he looked at the swords they had brought from the Troll's lair, and he said, "These are not Troll make. They are old swords, very old swords of the High Elves of the West, my king. They are made in Gondolin for the Goblin War. They must have come from a dragon's hoard or goblin plunder, for the dragons and goblins destroyed that city many ages ago." Thus, Thorin, the rune's name, Orcrist, the goblin cleaver, in the ancient tongue of Gondolin. He was a famous blade. Thus, Gandalf was Glamdring, bow hammer that the king of Gondolin once wore. Keep them well. Whence did the trolls get them, I wonder? Said Thorin, looking at his sword with a new interest. I could not say, said Aaron. One may guess that your trolls had plundered other plunderers, or come on the remnants of old robberies in some hold in the mountain. I have heard that there are still forgotten treasures of old to be found in the desert caverns of the mines of Moria, since the dwarf and goblin war. Thorin pondered these words. I will keep the sword in honor, he said. May it soon cleave goblins once again. A wish that is likely to be granted soon enough in the mountains, said Aaron. But show me your map. He took it and gazed long at it, and he shook his head. For if he did not altogether approve of dwarves and the love of gold, he hated dragons and their cruel wickedness. And he grieved to remember the ruin of the town of Dale and its merry bells, and the burned banks of the bright river running. The moon was shining in a broad silver crescent. He held up the map, and the white light shone through it. What is this? He said. There are moon ladders here, besides the plain runes which say 5 feet high, the door, and 3 may walk abreast. What are moon ladders? Asked the Hobbit, full of excitement. What are moon ladders? Asked the Hobbit, full of excitement. He loved maps, as I've told you before, and he also liked runes and ladders, and cunning handwriting, though when he wrote himself it was a bit thin and spidery. Moon ladders are rune ladders, but you cannot see them, said Aaron. Not when you look straight at it. They can only be seen when the moon shines behind them, and what is more, with a more cunning sort, it must be a moon of the same shape and season as the day when they are written. The dwarves invented them, and wore them with silver pens, as your friends, and wrote them with silver pens, your friends could tell you. These must have been written on a midsummer's eve in a crescent moon a long while ago. What do they say? Asked Gandalf, Thorin together, a bit vexed perhaps that even Erod should have found us out first. Though really, there had not been a chance before, and there would not have been another until goodness knows when. Stand by the grey stone when the thrush knocks, read Aaron, and the setting sun with the last light of Durin's day will shine upon the keyhole. Durin, said Thorin. He was the father of the fathers of the eldest race of dwarves, the long beards, and my first ancestor. I am his heir. What is Durin's day? Asked Aaron. The first day of the dwarves' new year, said Thorin. Is, as all should know, the first day of the last moon of autumn, on the threshold of winter. We still call it Durin's Day, when the last moon of autumn and the sun are in the sky together. But this will not help us much, I fear, for it passes our skill in these days to guess when such a time would come again. That remains to be seen, said Gandalf. Is there any more writing? None to be seen by this moon, said Aaron, and he gave the map back to Thorin. And then they went down to the water to see the elves dance and sing upon the Midsummer's Eve. The next morning was a midsummer's morning, as fair and fresh as could be dreamed. Blue sky and never a cloud, the sun dancing on the water. Now they rode away amid songs of farewell and good speed, with their hearts ready for more adventure, and with a knowledge of the road they must follow over the misty mountain to the land beyond. Alright, chapter 4. Over hill and under hill. There are many paths that led up into those mountains, and many passes over them. But most of the paths were cheats and deceptions, and led nowhere, or to bad end. And most of the passes were infested by evil things and dreadful dangers. The dwarves and the Hobbit, helped by the wise advice of Aaron and the knowledge and memory of Gandalf, took the right road to the right pass. Long days after they had climbed out of the valley and left the last homely house miles behind, they were still going up and up and up. It was a hard path and a dangerous path, a crooked way and a lonely and long. Now they could look back over the lands they had left, lay down behind them far below, far, far away in the west, where things were blue and faint. People knew there lay his known country of safe and comfortable things, and his little hobbit hole. He shivered. It was getting bitter cold up here, and the wind came shrill among the rocks. Boulders too at times came galloping down the mountainsides, let loose by midday sun upon the snow, and passed among them, which was lucky, or over their heads, which was alarming. The nights were comfortable and chill, and they did not dare to sing or talk too loud, for the echoes were uncanny, and the silence seemed to dislike being broken, except by the noise of water and the wail of wind and the crack of stone. The summer is getting on down below, thought Bilbo, and haymaking is going on and picnics. They'll be harvesting on blackberry before we even begin to go down to the other side that does rain. And the others were thinking equally gloomy thoughts, although when they had said goodbye to Aaron in the high hope of a midsummer morning, they had spoken gaily of the passage of the mountain, and of riding swiftly across the lands beyond. They had thought of coming to the secret door in the lonely mountain, perhaps that very next last moon of autumn. Perhaps it'll be Doomsday, they had said. Only Gandalf had shaken his head and said nothing. Dwarves had not passed that way for many years, but Gandalf had, and he knew how evil and danger had grown and thriven in the wild. Since the dragons had driven men from the lands, and the goblins had spread in secret of the battle of the mines of Moria. Even the good plans of wise wizards like Gandalf and of good friends like Aaron go astray sometimes when you are off on dangerous adventures or the edge of the wild, and Gandalf was a wise enough wizard to know it. I should have taken a moment to think about the last chapter, honestly. Well, it's not like there's much to remark about it. They're just talking about plans. And I would rather not pronounce this sort of word, just to not run any sort of risk or whatever future headaches, because I don't really care too much about this sort of thing. But I do care about having more trouble or annoyance. About the map. Kinda curious they make moon, what do they call it? Moon what? Moon lanterns. Kind of a weird, well, if you know that moon ladders are something you can something that exists, wouldn't you check every document, every map, like every night to see the moon, to see if they exist? What would they actually be their use? I mean, yeah, sure, every map will not be like something very, very practical to do. But if you're a sort of a evil master with a bunch of hundreds of, who knows, hundreds of thousands of goblins, and you have items, bunch of items just laying about that you stole from other people, would you not like make an effort to like check every night for the moon ladders to see if there was any hidden knowledge in it? And also, how do you send a message to other people like this? You need to specifically, I guess it's sorta useful, but you can only read them in specific days of the year, in specific conditions of the year. That's like some terribly unreliable and slow way of like of spreading knowledge, of sharing knowledge. It's easier to just codify, just make a code. Then in Moonlanders, I guess it's fantasy-like and interesting, but it's horribly impractical. It is horribly impractical as a way of transferring knowledge. Now, I'm actually liking the way they're here describing the way that the environments change. One is full of ravines and holes and things like valleys. The other now is like going up and rocks and boulders and caves. It feels very interesting, though not very descriptive. Like it does stimulate the imagination, but you need to have a good imagination to actually make something interesting in your mind, you know? You need to be already somewhat good at imagination. It stimulates you to be more imaginative, but it also needs you to have some sort of experience and imagination to actually imagine something interesting enough. That's kind of an interesting characteristic of this type of writing, because my writing is overly descriptive. While here is his... Whoa, what's this? Okay. While my writing is overly descriptive, here is like just very vague and colorful in the way he describes things. Anyway, moving on. He knew that something unexpected might happen, and he hardly dared to hope that they would pass without fearful adventure over those great tall mountains, with lonely peaks and valleys where no king ruled. They did not. All was well, until one day they met a thunderstorm. More than a thunderstorm, a thunder battle. You know how terrific a really big thunderstorm can be down inland and in a river valley? Especially at times when two great thunderstorms meet and clash. More terrible still are thunder and lightning in the mountains at night, when storm comes up from the east and west and make war. The lightning splinters on the peaks and rocks shiver, and great crashes split the air and go rolling and tumbling to every cave and hollow. And the darkness is filled with overwhelming noise and sudden light. Bilbo had never seen nor imagined anything of the kind. They were high up in a narrow place, with a dreadful fall into a dim valley at one side of them. There they were sheltering under a hanging rock for the night, and he lay beneath a blanket and shook from head to toe. When he peeped out in the lightning flashes, he saw that across the valley the stone giants were out, and were hurling rocks at one another for a game and catching them, and tossing them down into the darkness where they smashed among the trees far below, or splintering into little bits with a bang. Then came a wind and a rain, and the wind whipped the rain and the hail about in every direction, so that an overhanging rock was no protection at all. Soon they were getting drenched, and their ponies were standing with their heads down and their tails between their legs, and some of them were whining and with fright. They could hear the giants guffawing and shouting all over the mountainside. "This won't do it at all," said Thorin. If we don't get blown up or drowned or struck by lightning, we shall be picked up by some giant and kicked sky high for a foothold. Well, if you know of anywhere better, take us there, said Gandalf, who was feeling very grumpy and was far from happy about the giants himself. Does this show the giants? No. This picture does make an interesting... does show a little bit of an interesting terrain, of interesting geography. Can you imagine going up and down these little meandering roads and getting yourself situated and how do you call, located in a map in a place like this without GPS? So if you lose where you are, how are you gonna find it? And you move around, how are you gonna find yourself again? That is very, very, very humbling, I would say, this sort of thing. And a bit frightening. The end of their argument was that they sent Fili and Kili to look for a better shelter. They had very sharp eyes, and being the youngest of the dwarves by some 50 years, they usually got these sort of jobs, when everybody could see that it was absolutely no use sending people. There is nothing like looking if you want to find something, or so Thorin said to the young dwarves. You certainly usually find something if you look, but it's not always quite the something you are after. So it proves on this occasion. Soon Fili and Kili came crawling back, holding on to the rocks in the wind. We found a dry cave, they said, not far round the next corner, and ponies and I could get inside. Have you thoroughly explored? Said the wizard, who knew that caves up in the mountains were seldom unoccupied. Yes, yes, they said, though everybody knew they could not have been long about it. They had come back too quick. It isn't all that big, and it does not go far back. That, of course, is the dangerous part about caves. You don't know how far they go back. Sometimes, where a passage behind may lead you, or what is waiting for you inside. But now, Fili and Kili's news seemed good enough. So they all got up and prepared to move. The wind was howling, and the thunder still growling, and they had a business getting themselves and their ponies along. Still, it was not very far to go, and before long they came to a big rock standing out into the path. If you step behind, you found a low arch in the side of the mountain. There was just room to get the ponies through with a squeeze when they had been unpacked and unsaddled. As they passed under the arch, it was good to hear the wind and the rain outside instead of all about them, and to feel safe from the giants and their rocks. But the wizard was taking no risk. He lit up his wand, as he did that day in Bilbo's dining room that seemed so long ago, if you remember. And by its light they explored the cave from end to end. It seemed quite a fair size, but not too large and mysterious. He had a dry floor and some comfortable nooks. At one end there was room for the ponies, and there they stood, mighty glad of the change, steaming, and camping in their nose bags. Oin and Gloins wanted to light a fire at the door to dry their clothes, but Gandalf would not hear of it, so they spread out their wet things on the floor and got dry ones out of their bundles. Then they made their blankets comfortable, got out their pipes and blew smoke rings, which Gandalf turned into different colors, and sat dancing up the roof to amuse him. They talked and forgot about the storm, and discussed what each would do with his share of the treasure, when they got it, which at the moment did not seem so impossible. And so they dropped off to sleep one by one, and that was the last time that they used the ponies' baggage, tools, and paraphernalia that they had brought with them. It turned out a good thing that night that they had brought little Bilbo with them after all, for, somehow, he could not go to sleep for a long while, and when he did sleep, he had very nasty dreams. He dreamed that a crack in the wall at the back of the cave got bigger and bigger, and opened wider and wider, and he was very afraid but could not call out or do anything but lie and look. Then he dreamed that the floor of the cave was giving away, and he was slipping, beginning to fall down, goodness knows where to. At that, he woke up with a horrible start, and found that part of his dream was true. A crack had opened at the back of the cave, and it was already a wide passage. He was just in time to see the last of the pony's tail disappear into it. Of course, he gave a very loud yell as yell as a hobbit can give, which is surprising for their size. Out jumped the goblins, big goblins, great ugly-looking goblins. Lots of goblins, before you could say rocks and blocks. There were 6 to each dwarf, at least, and 2 even for Bilbo, and they were all grabbed and carried through the crack before you could say tinder and flint. But not Gandalf. Bilbo's yell had done that much good. It had waked him up wide in a splintered second, and when goblins came to grab him, there was a terrific flash like light in a cave, a smell like gunpowder, and several of them fell dead. The crack closed with a snap, and Bilbo and the dwarves were on the wrong side of it. Where was Gandalf? Of that, neither they nor the goblins had any idea, and the goblins did not wait to find out. They seized Bilbo and the dwarves and hurried them along. It was deep, deep dark, such as only goblins that have taken to living in the heart of the mountains can see through. The passages there were crossed and tangled in all directions, but the goblins knew their way, as well as you do, to the nearest post office. And the way went down, and it was most horribly stuffy. The goblins were very rough, and pinched unmercifully, and chuckled and laughed in their horribly stony voices. And Bilbo was more than happy, even then when the troll had picked him up by his toes. He wished again and again for his nice bright hobbit hole, not for the last time. Now there came a glimmer of a red light before them. The goblins began to sink or croak, keeping time with the flap of their flat feet on the stone, and shaking their prisoners as well. Snap the blank trap, grip, grab, pinch, snap, and down to the goblin town you go, my lad. Clash, crash, crush, smash, hammer and tongs, knocker and guns, pound, pound, fire underground. Ho, ho, my lad. Switch, smack, whip, crack, batter and beat, yammer and bleat. Work, work, nor dare to shriek, to shirk, while goblins quaff and goblins laugh, round and round far underground below, my lad. It sounded truly terrifying. The walls echoed to the clap snap, and the crush smash, and to the ugly laughter of their ho ho, my lad. The general meaning of the song was only too plain, for now the goblins took out whips and whipped them with a swish smack, and set them running as fast as they could in front of them, and more than one of the dwarves were already yammering and bleating like anything when they stumbled into a big cavern. It was lit by a great red fire in the middle, and by torches along the wall, and it was full of goblins. They all laughed and stamped and clapped their hands, when the dwarves, with poor little Bilbo at the back and nearest to the whips, came running in, while the goblin drivers whooped and cracked their whips behind. The ponies were already there and huddled in a corner, and there were all the baggage and packages lying broken open, and being rummaged by goblins, and smelled by goblins, and fingered by goblins, and quarreled over by goblins. I'm afraid that was the last they ever saw of those excellent little ponies, including a jolly sturdy little white fellow that Aaron had lent to Gandalf, since his horse was not suitable for the mountain paths. For goblins eat horses and ponies and donkeys, and other much more dreadful things, and they are always hungry. Just now, however, the prisoners were thinking only of themselves. The goblins chained their hands behind their backs, and linked them all together in a line, and dragged them to the far end of the cavern, with little Bilbo tugging at the end of the rope. There in the shadows on a large flat stone sat a tremendous goblin with a huge hand, and armed goblins were standing round him, carrying the axes and the bent swords that they use. Now, goblins are cruel, wicked, and bad-hearted. They make no beautiful things, but they make many clever ones. They can tunnel in a mine, as well as any but the most skilled dwarves. When they take the trouble, though they are usually untidy and dirty. Hammers, axes, swords, daggers, pickaxes, tongs, and also instruments of torture they make very well, or get other people to make to their design. Prisoner slaves that have to work till they die for want of air and light. It's not unlikely that they invented some of the machines that have since troubled the world, fashioned the ingenious devices for killing large numbers of people at once, for wheels and engines and explosions always delighted them, and also not working with their own hands more than they could help. But in those days and those wild parts, they had not advanced, as it's called, so far. They did not hate dwarves especially, no more than they hated everyone and everything, and particularly the orderly and prosperous. In some parts, wicked dwarves had even made alliances with them. But they had a special grudge against Thorin's people, because of the war which you have heard mentioned, but which does not come into this tale. And anyway, goblins don't care who they catch, as long as it's done smart and secret, and the prisoners are not able to defend themselves. "Who are these miserable persons?" said the great goblin. "Dwarves and this," said one of the drivers, pulling at Bilbo's chain so that he fell forward onto his knees. "We found them sheltering our front porch." "What do you mean by it?" said the great goblin, turning to Thorin. "Up to no good, I'll warrant. Spying on the private business of my people, I guess. Thieves, I shouldn't be surprised to learn. Murderers and friends of elves, not unlikely. Come, what have they got to say?" "What have you got to say?" Thorin the dwarf at your service," he replied. It was merely a polite nothing. "Of the things which you suspect and imagine, we had no idea at all. We sheltered from a storm in what seemed a convenient cave and unused. Nothing was further from our thoughts than inconveniencing goblins in any way whatever." "That was true enough," said the great goblin. "So you say. Might I ask what you were doing in the mountains at all? And where you were coming from? And where you were going to? In fact, I should like to know all about you. Not that it will do you much good, Thorin Oakenshield. I know too much about your folk already. But let's have the truth, or I'll prepare something particularly uncomfortable for you." "We were on a journey to visit our relatives, our nephews and nieces, and first, second, and third cousins, and the other descendants of our grandfathers who live on the east side of these truly hospitable mountains," said Thorin, not quite knowing what to say all at once in a moment, when obviously the exact truth would not do at all. "He's a liar! Oh, truly tremendous one," said one of the drivers. "Several of our people were struck by lightning in the cave when he invited these creatures to come below, and they are as dead as stones. Also, he has not explained death." He held out the sword which Thorin had worn, the sword which came from the troll's lair. The great goblin gave a truly awful howl of rage when he looked at it, and all his soldiers gnashed their teeth, clashed their shields, and stamped. They knew the sword at once. It had killed hundreds of goblins in its time, when the fair elves of Gondolin hunted them in the hills or did battle before their walls. They had called it Orcrist, goblin cleaver, but the goblins called it simply biter. They hated it, and hated worse anyone that carried it. "Murderers and elf-friends!" the great goblin shouted. "Slash them, beat them, bite them, gnash them, take them away to dark holes full of snakes, and never let them see the light again." He was in such a rage that he jumped off his seat and himself rushed to Thorin with his mouth open. Just at that moment, all the lights in the cavern went out, and the great fire went oof poof. It went off, poof, into a tower of blue glowing smoke, right up to the roof, that scattered piercing white sparks all among the goblins. The yells and yammering, croaking, gibbering, jabbering, howls, growls, and curses, shrieking and shrieking that followed were beyond description. Several hundred wild cats and wolves being roasted slowly alive together would not have compared with it. The sparks were burning holes in the goblins, and the smoke that now fell from the roof made the air too thick for even their eyes to see through. Soon they were falling over one another and rolling in heaps on the floor, biting and kicking and fighting as they had all gone mad. Suddenly, a sword flashed in its own light. Bilbo's sight go right through the great goblin as he stood dumbfounded in the middle of his rage. He fell dead, and the goblin soldiers fled before the sword shrieked into the darkness. The sword went back into his sheath. "Follow me, quick!" said a voice, fierce and quiet. "Follow me, quick!" And before Bilbo understood what had happened, he was trotting along again, as fast as he could trot at the end of the line, down more dark passages with the yells of the goblin hall growing fainter behind him. A pale light was leading them on. "Quicker, quicker!" said the voice. The torches will soon be relit." "For a minute," said Dory, who was back next to Bilbo, and a decent fellow. He made the hobbit scramble on his shoulders as best as he could with his tight hands, and then off they all went at a run, with a clink of chains and many a stumble, since they had no hands to steady themselves with. Not for a long while did they stop, and by that time they must have been right down in the very mountain's heart. "Hello, Pantsu, how you doing?" Then Gandalf lit up his wand. Of course it was Gandalf. But just then they were too busy to ask how he got there. He took out his sword again, and again it flashed in the dark by itself. It burned with a rage that made it gleam if goblins were about. Now it was bright as blue flame for the light in the killing of the great lord of the cave. He made no trouble whatever of cutting through goblin chains and setting all the prisoners free as quickly as possible. The sword's name was Glundring, the foul hammer, if you remember. The goblins just called it Beater, and hated it worse than Biter, if possible. Orcris, too, had been saved, for Gandalf had brought it along as well, snatching from one of the terrified guards. Gandalf thought of most things, and though he could not do everything, he could do a great deal for his friends in a tight corner. Okay, ad break's coming. I need a little rest and eating some snackies. Time to eat a little bit of a bit of a heated sandwich because it's cold and chilly over here, and I need some sustenance. So see you guys in 3, maybe more minutes. Bye bye. Alright, I'm back. Now that was good. That felt very good. Some heated sandwiches to warm me up from inside. Oh god. What? Hold up, someone just gave me money. Is this my Twitch payout? What the fuck? Who just gave me money? My god. Oh my god, even more games are being released. Even more games are being released. On Steam. My wishlist like just keeps growing. Worst am I... We're rich! I know, right? What the fuck's giving me money? I didn't even receive any email about it. I didn't even receive an email about it. That's weird. Just 1 second. Let me see if I can take a look at my earnings payouts. Okay. I did receive... Huh. Yeah, I did receive from Twitch. Damn. Okay, thank you, Twitch. I just got over my threshold, my earnings threshold on Twitch, and they paid me. Thank you, thank you. It's still not a lot of money, but thank you. A little bit of change, but thank you. Anyway, since I live in the third world, even something as little as $50 is good enough. I mean, not good enough. It gives it's quite a lot, significant amount of money converted to my coin. It's one of the reasons why I started, really, because it is. Even if I just get a little bit, it turns into so much good money. Anyway, time to continue. Now, now we were here. We could do a great deal for friends in a tight corner. Are you all here? He said, handing his sword back to Thorin with a bow. Let me see. 1, that's Thorin. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Where are Philly and Killy? Here they are. 12, 13, and here's Mr. Baggins, 14. Well, it might be worse. And then again, it might be a good deal better. No ponies and no food and no knowing quite where we are, and hordes of angry goblins just behind. On we go! On they went. Gandalf was quite right. They began to hear goblin noises and horrible cries far behind in the passages they had come through. That sent them on faster than ever, and as poor Bilbo could not possibly go half as fast, for dwarves can run along a tremendous pace. I can tell you, when they have to, they took it in turn to carry him on their backs. Still, goblins go faster than dwarves, and these goblins knew the way better. They had made the path themselves, and were madly angry. So that do what they could, the dwarves heard the cries and howls getting closer and closer. Soon they could hear even the flap of the goblin feet, many feet which seemed only just around the last corner. The big cup of red torches could be seen behind them in the tunnel they were following. And they were getting deadly tired. Why, oh why did I ever leave my rabbit hole? Said poor Mr. Baggins, bumping up and down on Bomber's back. Why, oh why did I ever bring a wretched little hobbit on a treasure hunt? Said poor Bomber, who was fat and staggered along with the sweat dripping down his nose in his heat and terror. At this point, Gandalf fell behind, and Thor with him. They turned a sharp corner. About turn, he shouted. Draw your sword, Thorin. There was nothing else to be done, and the goblins did not like it. They came scurrying around the corner in full cry. They found goblin cleaver and full hammer shining cold in bright light, shining cold and bright, right in their astonished eyes. The ones in front dropped their torches and gave one yell before they were killed. The ones behind yelled still more and leapt back, knocking over those that were running after them. "Bite her and beat her!" they shrieked, and soon they were all in confusion, and most of them were hustling back to the way they had come. It was quite a long while before any of them dared to turn that corner. By that time, the dwarves had gone on again, a long, long way, on into the dark tunnels of the goblins' realm. When the goblins discovered that, they put out their torches and they slipped on soft shoes, and they chose out their very quickest runners with the sharpest ears and eyes. These ran forward, as swift as weasels in the dark, and with hardly any more noise than bats. That is why neither Bilbo, nor the dwarves, nor even Gandalf heard them coming, nor did they see them, but they were seen by the goblins that ran silently up behind, for Gandalf was letting his wand give out a faint light to help the dwarves as they went along. Quite suddenly Dory, now at the back again carrying Bilbo, was grabbed from behind in the dark. He shouted and fell, and the Hobbit rolled off his shoulders into the backless, bumped his head on hard rock, and remembered nothing more. Riddles in the Dark, Chapter 5. You know, the one thing that's making itself clear over here is that the dwarves are pretty fucking useless. Twice the dwarves got captured and Gandalf had to save them. Twice. The dwarves didn't even fight. Just Thorin just had like a short little fight once, and now though he helped a little. Now he again helped Gandalf, but aside from that, all the dwarves and even Bilbo have been quite useless in this whole fucking journey. Damn. They're supposed to be like the hero's journey, where the first they are useless and weak, and then they get stronger. Is that what's going on? Just quite curious, because it doesn't really help. It doesn't really help the. It doesn't really help my image of the doors if they're like this. Anyway, let me take a look at someone over here that's playing Tomb Raider Remastered. I'm gonna keep this the stream on the side because I'm kind of want to see how it looks like. Anyway, moving on. When Bilbo opened his eyes, he wondered if he had, for it was just as dark as with them shut. No one was anywhere near him. Just imagine his fright. He could hear nothing, see nothing, and he could feel nothing except the stone of the floor. Very slowly he got up and groped about on all fours, till he touched the wall of the tunnel. But neither up nor down could he find anything. Nothing at all. No signs of goblins, no signs of dwarves. His head was swimming, and he was far from certain even of the direction they had been going when he had his fall. He guessed as well as he could, and crawled along for a good way, till suddenly his hand met what it felt like a tiny ring of cold metal lying on the floor of the tunnel. It was a turning point in his career, but he did not know it. He put the ring in his pocket, almost without thinking. Certainly it did not seem of any particular use at the moment. He did not go much further, but sat down on the cold floor and gave himself up to complete miserableness for a long while. He thought of himself frying bacon and eggs in his own kitchen at home, or he could feel inside that it was high time for some meal or other, but that only made him miserabler. He could not think what to do, nor could he think what had happened. Oh, why had he been left behind? Oh, why, if he had been left behind, goblins had not caught him, or even why his head was so sore. The truth was he had been lying quiet, out of sight and out of mind, in a very dark corner for a long while. After some time he felt for his pipe. It was not broken, and that was something. Then he felt for his pouch, and there was some tobacco in it, and that was something more. Then he felt for matches, and he could not find any at all, and that shattered his hopes completely. just as well for him, as he agreed when he came to his senses. Goodness knows what that striking of matches and the smell of tobacco would have brought on him out of dark holes in that horrible place. Still, at the moment he felt very crushed. But in slapping all his pockets and feeling all around himself for matches, his hand came on the hilt of his little sword, the little dagger that he got from the trolls, that he had quite forgotten. Nor fortunately had the goblins noticed it, as he wore it inside his breeches. Now he drew it on. It shone pale and dim before his eye. So it is an elvish blade too, he thought. And goblins are not very near, and yet not far enough. But somehow he was comforted. It was rather splendid to be wearing a blade made in Gondolin, for the goblin wars of which so many songs had sung. And also he had noticed that such weapons made a great impression on goblins that came upon them suddenly. Go back, he thought. No good at all. Go sideways. Impossible. Go forward. Only thing to do. On we go. So up he got, and trotted along with his little sword held in front of him, and one hand feeling the wall, and his heart all of a pattern and a pita. Now, certainly Bilbo was in what is called a tight place, but you must remember, it was not quite so tight for him as it would have been for me or for you. Hobbits are not quite like ordinary people. And after all, if their holes are nice, cheery places and properly aired, quite different from the tunnels of the goblins, still they are more used to tunneling than we are, and they do not easily lose their sense of direction on the ground, not when their heads have recovered from being bumped. Also, they can move very quietly and high easily, and recover wonderfully from falls and bruises, and they have a fund of wisdom and wise sayings that men have mostly never heard or have forgotten long ago. I should have liked not to have been in Mr. Baggins' place. All the same, the tunnel seemed to have no end. All he knew was that it was still going down pretty steadily and keeping the same direction, in spite of a twist and a turn or two. There were passages leading off to the side every now and then, as he knew by the glimmer of his sword, or he could feel with his hand on the wall. Of these he took no notice, except to hurry past for fear of goblins, or half-imagined dark things coming out of them. On and on he went, and down, and still he heard no sound of anything, except the occasional whir of a bat by his ears, which startled him at first, till it became too frequent to bother about. I do not know how long he kept on like this, hating to go on, not daring to stop. On, until he was tireder than tired. It seemed like all the way to tomorrow and over to the days beyond. Suddenly, without warning, he trotted splash into water. Ugh! It was icy cold. That pulled him up sharp and short. He did not know whether it was just a pool in the path, or the edge of underground stream that crossed the passage, or the brink of a deep, dark subterranean lake. The sword was hardly shining at all. He stopped, and he could hear, when he listened hard, drops, dripping from an unseen roof into the water below. But there seemed no other sort of sound. So it is a pool or a lake and not an underground river, he thought. Still, he did not dare to wade out into the darkness. He could not swim, and he thought too of the nasty, slimy things, with big, bulging blind eyes, wriggling in the water. There are strange things living in the pools and lakes in the hearts of mountains. Fish whose feathers swam in, goodness only knows how many years ago, and never swam out again. While their eyes grew bigger and bigger and bigger from trying to see in the blackness. Also, there are other things more slimy than fish. Even in the tunnels and caves the goblins have made for themselves, there are other things living, unbeknown to them, that have sneaked in from outside to lie up in the dark. Some of these caves, too, go back in their beginnings to ages before the goblins, who only widened them and joined them up with passage. And the original owners are still there in odd corners, blinking and nosing about. Deep down here by the dark water lived old Gollum, A small, slimy creature. I don't know where he came from, nor who or what he was. He was Gollum, as dark as darkness, except for two big round pale eyes in his thin face. He had a little boat, and he rowed about quite quietly on the lake, for a lake it was, wide and deep and deadly cold. He paddled it with large feet dangling over the side, but never a ripple did he make. Not he. He was looking out of his pale, lamp-like eyes from blind fish, which he grabbed with his long fingers as quick as thinking. He liked meat too. Gobbling he thought good when he could get it, but he took care they never found him out. He just throttled them from behind if they ever came down alone anywhere near the edge of the water. All he was prowling about. He very seldom did, but he had a feeling that something unpleasant was lurking down there, down at the very roots of the mountain. They had come on the lake when they were turning down long ago, and they found they could go no further. So there the road ended in that direction, and there was no reason to go that way, unless the great goblin sent them. Sometimes he took a fancy for fish from the lake, and sometimes neither goblin nor fish came back. Actually, Gollum lived on a slimy island of rock in the middle of the lake. He was watching Bilbo now from the distance with his pale eyes like telescopes. Bilbo could not see him, but he was wondering a lot about Bilbo, for he could see that he was no goblin at all. Gollum got into his boat and shot off from the island, while Bilbo was sitting on the brink altogether, flummoxed and at the end of his way and his wits. Suddenly up came Gollum and whispered and hissed, "Bless us, splash us, my precious. I guess it's a choice feast. At least, a tasty morsel it'll make us, Gollum." And when he said Gollum, he made a horrible swallowing noise in his throat. That is how he got his name, though he always called himself my precious. The Hobbit jumped nearly out of his skin when the hiss came in his ears, and he suddenly saw the pale eyes sticking out at him. "Who are you?" he said, thrusting his dagger in front of him. "What is he, my precious?" whispered Gollum, who always spoke to himself, through never having anyone else to speak to. This is what he had come to find out, for he was not really very hungry at the moment, only curious. Otherwise, he would have grabbed first and whispered afterwards. "I am Mr. Bilbo Baggins. I have lost the dwarves and I have lost the wizard, and I don't know where I am, and I don't want to know. If only I can get away." "What's he got in his hands?" said Gollum, looking at the sword which he did not quite like. "A sword. Blade which came out of Gondolin," said Gollum, and became quite polite. "Perhaps he sits here and chats with it a bit, my precious. He likes riddles, perhaps it does it?" He was anxious to appear friendly, at any rate for the moment, and until he found out more about the sword and the Hobbit. Whether he was quite alone really, whether he was good to eat, and whether Gollum was really hungry. Riddles were all he could think of. Asking them, and sometimes guessing them, had been the only game he had ever played with other funny creatures sitting in their holes in the long ago, before he lost all his friends and was driven away, alone, and crept down into the dark under the mountain. "Very well," said Bilbo, who was anxious to agree, until he found out more about the creature, whether he was quite alone, whether he was fierce or hungry, and whether he was a friend of the goblins. "You was first," he said, because he had not had time to think of a riddle. So Gollum, what? Oh shit! "What has roots as nobody sees? Is taller than trees. Up he goes, yet never grows." "Easy," said Bilbo. "Mountain, I suppose." "Does he guess easy? He must have a competition with us, my precious." His precious asked, and he doesn't answer. We eats it, my precious. If it asks us, and we don't answer, then we does what he wants, eh? We shows it the way out, yes? Alright, said Bilbo, not daring to disagree, and then he burst in his brain to think of riddles that could save him from being eaten. 30 white horses on a red hill. First they champ, then they stamp, then they stand still. That was all he could think of to ask. The idea of eating was rather on his mind. He was rather an old one too, and Gollum knew the answer as well as you do. Chestnuts, he said. His teeth, my precious. But he has only 6. Then he asked his second. Voiceless he cries, wingless flutters, toothless bites, mouthless mutters. Half a moment, cried Bilbo, who was still thinking uncomfortably about eating. Fortunately, he had once heard something rather like this before, and getting his wits back, he thought of the answer. Wind, of course, he said, and was so pleased that he made up one on the spot. This will puzzle the nasty little underground creature, he thought. An eye in a blue face saw an eye in a green face. That eye is like to this eye, said the first one, but in low place, not in high place. Oh, the hisses almost are not being caught up with the mic. Hang on. Said Gollum. He had been underground a long time, and was forgetting that sort of thing. But just as Bilbo was beginning to hope that the rat would not be able to get answer, Gollum brought up memories of ages and ages and ages before, when he lived with his grandmother in a hole in a bank by a river. My precious, he said. Done on the daisies, it means, it does. But these ordinary above-ground, everyday sort of riddles were tiring for him. Also, they remind him of days when he had been less lonely and sneaky and nasty, and that put him out of temper. What is more, they made him hungry. But this time, he tried something a bit more difficult and more unpleasant. He cannot be seen, he cannot be felt, cannot be heard, cannot be smelled. He lies behind stars and on the hills, and empty holes it fills. He comes first and follows after, and laughs, fierce laughter. Unfortunately for Gollum, Bilbo had heard that sort of thing before, and the answer was all around him anyway. Dark, he said, with even scratching his head or putting on his thinking cap. A box without hinges, key or lid, yet golden treasure inside is hid. He asked to gain time, and he couldn't think of a really hard one. Thus he thought a dreadfully easy chestnut, though he had not asked in the usual words. But he proved a nasty poser for Gollum. He hissed to himself, and still he did not answer. He whispered and spluttered. After some, old Bilbo became impatient. Well, what is it? He said. That's not the kettle boiling over, as you seem to think from the noise you're making. Give us a chance. Let it give us a chance, my precious. Well, said Bilbo, after giving him a long chance. What about your gas? But suddenly, Gollum remembered thieving from nests long ago, and sitting under the river bank, teaching his grandmother to suck. Eggs it is, he hissed. Eggs it is. Then he asked, alive without breath, as cold as death, never thirsty, ever drinking, all in mail, never clinking. Wait, I should have used Gollum's voice. Alive without breath, cold as, never thirsty, never drinking, only mail, never clinking. He also in his turn thought this was a dreadfully easy one, because he was always thinking of the answer, but he could not quite remember anything that at the moment. He was so flustered by the question. All the same, it was a poser for poor Bilbo, who never had anything to do with the water if he could help it. I imagine you know the answer, of course, or can guess. It's as easy as winking, since you are sitting comfortably at home and have not the danger of being eaten to disturb your thinking. Bilbo sat, and he cleared his throat once or twice, but no answer came. After a while, Gollum began to hiss with pleasure to himself. Is it nice, my precious? Is it juicy? Is it scrumptiously crunchable? He began to peer at Bilbo out of the darkness. Half a moment, said the Hobbit, shivering. I gave you a good long chance just now. We must make haste, said Gollum, beginning to climb out of his boat onto the shore to get Bilbo. When he put his long webby foot in the water, a fish jumped out in a fright and fell on Bilbo's toes. He said, "It's cold and clammy." And so he guessed. "Fish! Fish!" he cried. "It is fish!" Gollum was dreadfully disappointed, but Bilbo asked another riddle as quick as he ever could, so that Gollum had to get back into his boat and think. No legs lay on one leg. 2 legs are near. On 3 legs, 4 legs got some. It was not really the right time for this riddle, but Bilbo was in a hurry. Gollum might have had some trouble guessing if he had asked it at another time. As he was talking of fish, no legs was not so very difficult, and after that the rest was easy. Fish on a little table, man at table sitting on a stool. The cat has the bones. Fish on a little table, man at table sitting on a stool. The cat has the bones. That, of course, is the answer, and Gollum soon gave it. Then he thought the time had come to ask something hard and horrible. This is what he said. Dusting all things devours. Birds, beasts, trees, flowers. Gnaws iron, bites stew, grinds hard on stones to meal. Slatings, ruins town, and beats a mountain down. Poor Bilbo sat in the dark thinking of all the horrible names of all the giants and ogres he had ever heard told in Elfin tale. But not one of them had done all these things. He had a feeling that the answer was quite different, that he ought to know it, but he could not think of it. He began to get frightened, and that is bad for thinking. Gollum began to get out of his boat, flopped into the water, and paddled to the bank. Bilbo, with his eyes coming towards him. His tongue seemed to stick in his mouth. He wanted to shout, "Give me more time! Give me more time!" But all that came out with a sudden squeal was, "Time! Time!" Bilbo was saved by pure luck, but that of course was the answer. Gollum was disappointed once more, and now he was getting angry, and also tired of the game. It had made him very hungry indeed. This time he did not go back to the boat. He sat down in the dark by Bilbo. That made the Hobbit most dreadfully uncomfortable and scattered his wits. "It's got to ask us a question, my precious." Yes. Just one more guess." Yes, said Gollum. But Bilbo simply could not think of any question with that nasty wet coat thing sitting next to him, and pawing and poking him. He scratched himself, he pinched himself. Still, he could not think of anything. Ask us, said Gollum. Bilbo pinched himself and slapped himself. He gripped on his little sword, even felt in his pocket with his other hand. There he found the ring he had picked up in the passage and forgotten about. "What have I got in my pocket?" he said aloud. He was talking to himself, but Gollum thought it was a riddle, and he was frightfully upset. Not fair, he hissed. "It isn't fair, my precious. Is it, to ask us what's it got in its nasty little pocket, is it?" Bilbo, seeing what had happened and having nothing better to ask, stuck to his question. "What have I got in my pocket?" he said louder. Hissed Gollum. "You must give us 3 guesses, my precious. 3 guesses. Very well. Guess away," said Bilbo. "Is this?" said Gollum. "Thank you for the lurk, Mommy Obume. You have been witnesses and you have been appreciated." "Wrong," said Bilbo, who had luckily just taken his hand out again. "Yes, again." "Gollings," said Gollum, more upset than ever. He thought of all the things he kept in his own pockets. Fish bones, goblin's teeth, Wet shells, a bit of bat wing, a sharp stone to sharpen his fangs on, and other nasty things. He tried to think what other people kept in their pockets. Nice, he said at last. Wrong, said Bilbo, who had lost his some time ago. Last guess. Now Gollum was in a much worse state than when Bilbo had asked him the question. He hissed and spluttered and rocked himself backwards and forwards, and slapped his feet on the floor and wriggled and squirmed, but still he did not dare to waste his last guess. Come on, said Bilbo, I'm waiting. He tried to sound bold and cheerful, but he did not feel at all sure how the game was going to end, whether Gollum guessed right or not. Time's up, he said. String! Or nothing, shrieked Gollum, which was not quite fair, working 2 guesses at once. Both wrong, cried Bilbo, very much relieved. And he jumped at once to his feet, put his back to the nearest wall, and held out his little sword. He knew, of course, that the riddle game was secret and of immense antiquity, and even wicked creatures were afraid to cheat when they played at it. But he felt he could not trust the slimy thing to keep by any promise at a pinch. Any excuse would do for him to slide out of it. And after all, that last question had not been a genuine riddle according to the ancient ways, to the ancient law. But at any rate, Gollum did not at once attack him. He could see the sword in Bilbo's hand. He sat still, shivering and whispering. Alas, Bilbo couldn't wait no longer. Well, he said, what about your promise? I want to go. You must show me the way. Did we say so, precious? Show the nasty little baggins the way out. Yes, yes. But what has got it in its boxes, eh? Not string, precious, but not nothing. Oh no, Gollum. Never you mind, said Bilbo. A promise is a promise. Cross it is, impatient, precious, hissed Gollum. But he must wait. Yes, he must. We can't go up the tunnel so hasty. We must go and get some things first, just things to help us. Well, hurry up, said Bilbo, relieved to think of Gollum thinking away. He thought he was just making an excuse and did not mean to come back. What was Gollum talking about? What useful thing could he keep out on the dark lake? But he was wrong. Gollum did mean to come back. He was angry now and hungry, and he was a miserable, wicked creature, and already he had a plan. Not far away was his island, of which Bilbo knew nothing, and there in his hiding place he kept a few wretched oddments. And one very beautiful thing, very beautiful, very wonderful. He had a ring, a golden ring, a precious ring. My birthday present, he whispered to himself, as he had often done in the endless dark days. That is what we want now. Yes, we want it. He wanted it because it was a ring of power, and if you slipped the ring on your finger, you were invincible. Invisible. Only in the full sunlight could you be seen, and then only by your shadow, and that would be shaky and faint. My birthday present! It came to me on my birthday, my precious! So he had always said to himself. But who knows how Gollum came by that present? Ages ago, in the old days when such rings were still at large in the world, perhaps even the master who ruled them could not have said. Gollum used to wear it at first. It retired him. And then he kept it in a pouch next his skin, Hilly Gollum. And usually he hid it in a hole in the rock on his island, and was always going back to look at it. Still, sometimes he put it on when he could not bear to be parted from it any longer, or when he was very, very hungry and tired of fish. Then he would creep along a dark passage, looking for stray goblins. He might even venture into places where the torches were lit and made his eyes blink and smart, for he would be safe. Oh yes, quite safe. No one would see him. No one would notice him till he had his fingers on their throat. Only a few hours ago he had worn it and caught a small goblin imp. How it squeak! Hours ago he had worn it and caught how it squeak. He still had a bone or two left to gnaw, but he wanted something softer. Quite safe, yes, he whispered to himself. He won't see us, will it, my precious? No, he won't see us, and his nasty little sword would be useless. Yes, quite. That is what was in his wicked little mind. As he slipped suddenly from Bilbo's side and flapped back to his bow, and off into the dark, and went off into the dark. Bilbo thought he had heard less of him. Still he waited a while, for he had no idea how to find his way out alone. Suddenly he heard a screech. He sent a shiver down his back. Gollum was cursing and wailing away in the gloom. Not very far off by the sound of it, he was on his island, scrabbling here and there, searching and seeking in vain. Where is it? Where is it? Bilbo heard him cry. Lost it is, my precious. Lost, lost. Curses and crushes, my precious is lost. What's the matter? Bilbo called. What have you lost? You mustn't ask us, shrieked Gollum. Not its business, no. Gollum, it's lost. Gollum, Gollum, Gollum. Well, so am I, cried Bilbo. And I want to get unlost. And I want the game, and you promise. So come along. Come and let me out, and then go on with your looking. Utterly miserable as Gollum sounded, Bilbo could not find much pity in his heart, and he had a feeling that anything Gollum wanted so much could hardly be something good. Come along, he shouted. No, not yet, precious, Gollum answered. We must search for it. It's lost. Gollum. But you never guessed my last question as you promised, said Bilbo. Never guessed, said Gollum. Then suddenly out of the gloom came a sharp hiss. What has it got in its boxes? Tell us that. He must tell first. As far as Bilbo knew, there was no particular reason why he should not tell. Gollum's mind had jumped to a guess quicker than his. Naturally, for Gollum had brooded for ages on this one thing, and he was always afraid of its being stolen. But Bilbo was annoyed at the delay. After all, he had won the game. Oh shit, I yawned. Could not hold back this one. 1666 times, nice. After all, he had won the game, pretty fairly, at a horrible risk. Answers were to be guessed and not given, he said. But it wasn't a fair question, said Gollum. Not a riddle, precious. No. Oh well, if it's a matter of ordinary questions, Bilbo replied. Then ask one first. What have you lost? Tell me that. What has it got in its boxes? The sound came hissing louder and sharper. And as he looked towards it, to his alarm, Bilbo now saw two small points of light peering at him. As suspicion grew in Gollum's mind, the light of his eyes burned with a pale flame. What have you lost? Bilbo persisted. But now the light in Gollum's eyes had become a green fire, and it was coming swiftly nearer. Gollum. Yo. Damn. Where was I? But now the light in Gollum's eyes had become a green fire, and it was coming swiftly nearer. Gollum was in his boat again, paddling wildly back to the dark shore, and such a rage of loss and suspicion was in his heart that no sword had any more terror of him. Bilbo could not guess what had maddened the wretched creature, but he saw that all was up, and that Gollum meant to murder him at any rate. Just in time he turned and ran blindly back up the dark passage down which he had come, keeping close to the wall and feeling it with his left hand. What has it got in its boxes? He heard a hiss loud behind him, and the splash as Gollum leapt from his boat. What have I wonder? He said to himself, as he splunted and stumbled along, put his left hand in his pocket. The ring felt very cold. as he quietly slipped on to his groping forefinger. The hiss was close behind him. He turned now and saw Gollum's eyes like small green lamps coming up the slope. Terrified, he tried to run faster, but suddenly he struck his toes on a snag in the floor and fell flat with his little sword under him. In a moment, Gollum was on him, but before Bilbo could do anything, recover his breath, pick himself up, or wave his sword, Gollum passed by, taking no notice of him, cursing and whispering as he ran. What could it mean? Gollum could see in the dark. Bilbo could see the light of his eyes palely shining, even from behind. Painfully he got up and sheathed his sword, which was now glowing faintly again. Then very cautiously he followed. There seemed nothing else to do. It was no good crawling back down to Gollum's water. Perhaps if he followed him, Gollum might lead him to some way of escape without meaning to. Curse it! Curse it! Curse it! Hissed Gollum. Curse the baggins! It's gone! What has it got in its boxes? Oh, we guess, my precious. He's found it! Yes, he must have. My birthday present. Bilbo pricked up his ears. He was at last beginning to guess himself. He hurried a little, getting as close as he dared behind Gollum, who was still going quickly, not looking back, but turning his head from side to side, as Bilbo could see from the faint glimmer on the walls. My birthday present? That's it. How did we lose it, my precious? Yes, that's it. When we came this way last, when we twisted the nasty young squeaker. That's it. Curse it. It slipped from us. After all these ages and ages, it's gone. Gollum. Suddenly, Gollum sat down and began to weep. A whistling and gurgling sound horrible to listen to. Bilbo halted and flattened himself against the tunnel wall. After a while, Gollum stopped weeping and began to talk. He seemed to be having an argument with himself. It's no good going back to where to search now. We doesn't remember all the places we visited, and it's no use. The Baggins has got it in his boxes. The nasty noser has found it, we says. We guesses, precious, only guesses. We can't know till we find the nasty Christian squeezes it. But it doesn't know what the present can do, does it? It'll just keep it in its boxes. It doesn't know, and it can't go far. It's lost itself. The nasty nosy thing. It doesn't know the way out. It said so. Thank you for the lurk, Third PT. I see you, Third, and I love you. Beauty. It said so, yes. But it's tricksy. It doesn't say what it means. It won't say what it got in its boxes. It knows. It knows a way in. It must know a way out, yes. It's off to the back door. To the back door, that's it. The goblins will catch you then. You can't get out of the way, precious. Shh, shh, Gollum. Goblins, yes. What if it's got the present? Our precious present? Then goblins will get it, Gollum. They'll find it. They'll find out what it does. We shan't ever be safe again. Never. Gollum. One of the goblins will put it on, and then no one will see him. He'll be there but not be seen. Not even our clever eyes will notice him. And he'll come cripsy and tricksy and catch us. Gollum. Gollum. Then let's stop talking, precious, and make haste. If the Baggins has gone that way, he must go quick and see. Go! Not far now. Make haste. Okay, I need to actually grab more water. Doing this. Oh, and we're going to ad break, so I'm gonna start the ad break now. Grabbing some water, resting my throat for a second. See you guys in 3 minutes. Alright. Oh, 1 second. See, 1 second. Yeah, it does strain a bit the throat to make these Gollum voices, but it's fun. It is quite fun to try to mimic the voice acting. I'm no voice actor. It may sound cringe, but I enjoyed it a lot. Now, just need one. We were here, not far now. Make haste! With a spring, Gollum got up and started shambling off at a great pace. Bilbo hurried after him, still cautiously, though his chief fear now was of tripping on another's neck and falling with a noise. His head was in a whirl of hope and wonder. It seemed that the ring he had was a magic ring. It made you invisible. He had heard of such things, of course, in old tales, but it was hard to believe that he really had found one by accident. Still, there he was. Gollum, his bright eyes had passing by, only a yard to one side. On the went Gollum, flip-flopping ahead, hissing and cursing. Bilbo behind, going as softly as a hobbit can. Soon they came to places where, as Bilbo had noticed on the way down, side passages open. This way and that, Gollum began at once to count them. One left, yes. One left, yes. One right, yes. Two right, yes, yes. Two left, yes, yes. And so on and on. As the count grew, he slowed down and began to get shaky and weepy. For he was leaving the water further and further behind, and he was getting afraid. Goblins might be about, and he had lost his ring. At least he stopped by a low opening on the left as they went on. 7 right, yes. 6 left, yes, he whispered. This is it. This is the way to the back door, yes, here's the passage. He peered in and shrank back. We durstn't go in, precious. No, we dursn't. Goblins is down there. Lots of goblins. We smell them. What shall we do? Curse them. You must wait here, precious. Wait a bit and see. So they came to a dead stop. Gollum had brought Bilbo to the way out after all, but Bilbo could not get in. There was Gollum sitting, humped up right in the opening, and his eyes gleamed cold in his head as he waited from side to side between his knees. Bilbo crept away from the wall more quietly than a mouse, but Gollum stiffened at once and sniffed, and his eyes went green. He hissed softly but menacingly. He could not see the Hobbit, but now he was on the alert, and he had other senses that the darkness had sharpened, hearing and smell. He seemed to be crouched right down with his flat hands played on the floor, and his hair thrust out, nose almost to the stone, though he was only a black shadowy gleam of his own eye. Bilbo could see or feel that he was tense as a bowstring, gathered for a spring. Bilbo almost stopped breathing, and went stiff himself. He was desperate. He must get away out of this horrible darkness. Let me change this music because it's not fitting. Oh, it's Silence Taverns, of course. Let's see. And went stiff himself. He was desperate. He must get away out of this horrible darkness. While he had any strength left, he must fight. He must stab the foul thing, put its eyes out, kill it. It meant to kill it. No, not a fair fight. He was invisible now. Gollum had no sword. Gollum had not actually threatened to kill him or tried to yet. And he was miserable, alone, lost. A sudden understanding, a pity mixed with horror, welled up in Bilbo's heart. A glimpse of endless unmarked days without light or hope of betterment. Hearthstone, cold fish, sneaking and whispering. All these thoughts passed in a flash of a second. He trembled, and then quite suddenly another flash, as if lifted by a new strength in his resolve. He leaped. No great leap for a man, but a leap in the dark. Straight over Gollum's head he jumped, 7 feet forward and 3 in the air. Okay, what this does in actual normal people units? 7 feet. 7 feet. 7 centimeters. 200 centimeters. 7 feet, 3 feet. 19 centimeters. That's not that lot. That's 1 meter again. Okay, 100. So 1 meter up, 2 meters forward. Damn. What a crazy huge leap. Indeed, had he known it, he only just missed cracking skull on the long arch of the passage. Gollum threw himself backwards and grabbed as the hobbit flew over him, but too late. His hand snapped on thin air, and Bilbo, falling fair on his sturdy feet, sped off down the new tunnel. He did not turn to see what Gollum was doing. There was a hissing and cursing almost at his heels at first, then it stopped. All at once there came a blood-curdling shriek, filled with hatred and despair. Gollum was defeated. He dare go no further. He had lost his prey, and lost too the only thing he had ever cared for, his precious. The cry brought Bilbo's heart to his mouth, but still he held on. Now faint as an echo, but menacing, the voice came from behind. Thief! 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 Baggins! We hate it! We hate it! We hate it forever! Desire to ramble about Imperial measuring units intensified. Well, I have a desire to complain about Imperial measurement units. Because damn, these things are annoying. Doing university, I had teachers that taught physics that they like to mix up Imperial units with metric units just to catch us unaware, just to know we understood how to move these units around. He was not really a dick, but damn. Fuck. Never more. Never again. No more. Don't want you. Then there was silence. But that too seemed menacing to Bilbo. If goblins are so near that he smelt them, he thought, then they'll have heard his shrieking and cursing. Careful now, but this way will lead you to worse things. The entire world screams, why can't you be normal at the Anglosphere? Exactly. Like, why? Why? Please. I know it's gonna hurt. I know it's gonna be difficult, but can you please just start changing your goddamn units? Even worse that they are like the biggest, most influential culturally, and you have to suffer Imperial units like the British, and not just the Americans, but the British too. We have to suffer their Imperial units when there's like something clearly better right within hand. And at this point, if they had worked into changing them, they could have done already. They could have phased out already if they had started when they should have. But no, they refuse. But they refuse, the stubborn little fuckers. Yeah, moving on. The passage was low and roughly made. It was not too difficult for the Hobbit, except when, in spite of all care, he stubbed his poor toes again, several times, on nasty jagged stones in the floor. A bit low for goblins. At least for the big ones, thought Bilbo, not knowing that even the big ones, the orcs of the mountains, go along at a great speed, stooping low with their hands almost on the ground. Soon the passage that had been sloping down began to go up again, and after a while they climbed steeply. That slowed Bilbo down, but at last the slope stopped. The passage turned a corner and dipped down again, and there, at the bottom of a short incline, he saw, filtering round another corner, a glimpse of light. Not red light, the fire lantern, but a pale, out-of-door sort of light. Then Bilbo began to run. Scuttling as fast as his legs would carry him, he turned the last corner and came suddenly right into an open space, where the light, after all that time in the dark, seemed dazzlingly bright. Really, it was only a lick of sunshine into a doorway, where a great door, a stone door, was left standing open. Bilbo blinked, and then suddenly he saw the goblins. Goblins in full armor with drawn swords sitting just inside the door, and watching it with wide eyes, and watching the passage that led to it. They're aroused, alert, ready for anything. Oh, hang on, I need more. I need to grab a little bit more water. I did not grab a lot of water. Be right back, 1 minute. Alright. Where is it? They saw him sooner than he saw them. Yes, they saw him. Where there was an accent, where a last trick of the ring before he took a new master. It was not on his finger. With yells of delight, the goblins rushed upon him. A pang of fear and loss, like an echo of Gollum's misery, smote Bilbo, and forgot even to draw his sword, he struck his hand into his pockets. And there was the ring still in his left pocket, and it slipped on his finger. The goblins stopped short. They could not see a sign of him. He had vanished. They yelled twice as loud as before, but not so delightedly. "Where is it?" they cried. "Go back up the passage!" they shouted. "That way!" some yelled. "That way!" others yelled. "Look out for the door!" bellowed the captain. Whistles blew, armor crashed, swords rattled, goblins cursed and swore and ran hither and thither, falling over one another and getting very angry. There was a terrible outcry to do and disturbance. Oops. Bilbo was dreadfully frightened, but he had the sense to understand what had happened and to sneak behind the big barrel which held drink for the goblin guards, and so out of the way and avoid being trampled to death or caught by fear. "I must get to the door! I must get to the door!" he kept on saying to himself. But it was a long time before he ventured to try. Then it was like a horrible game of blind man's buff. The place was full of goblins running about, and a poor little hobbit dodged this way and that. Was knocked over by a goblin who could not make out what he had bumped into. Scrambled away on all fours, slipped away between the legs of the captain, just in time, got up, and ran for the door. 1 second. It was still ajar, but a goblin had pushed it nearly to. Bilbo struggled, but he could not move it. Tried to squeeze through the crack. He squeezed and squeezed, and he was stuck. It was awful. His buttons had got wedged on the door. His buttons had got wedged on the edge of the door and the doorpost. Could see outside into the open air. There were a few steps running down into a narrow valley between tall mountains. The sun came out from behind a cloud and shone bright on the outside of the door, but he could not get through. Suddenly, one of the goblins inside shouted, "There is a shadow by the door! Something is outside!" Bilbo's heart jumped into his mouth. He gave a terrific scream. Buttons burst off in all directions. He was through, with a torn coat and waistcoat, leaping down the steps like a goat, while bewildered goblins were still picking up his nice brass buttons on the doorstep. Of course, they soon came down after him, hooting and hallooing, and hunting among the trees, but they don't like the sun. It makes their legs wobble and their heads giddy. They could not find Bilbo with the ring on, slipping in and out of the shadow of the trees, running quick and quiet, and keeping out of the sun. So soon they went back grumbling and cursing to guard the door. Bilbo had escaped. Damn. Now this is a chapter quite an interesting chapter, because he got left behind, but that was a bit expected, I would say, maybe. Not exactly expected, but understandable. Like sometimes some things about the way things work on the story, about the way he writes the action, feels like impossible. Like what the fuck is going on? How is this comically thing going on? But they do make sense overall. I can say like he's the best at making Tolkien is the best at writing action, because it feels a little bit intentional that it's like this weird, like it is a style of not really going for the overly realistic and believable action. So it feels like it's a bit intentional, but it also makes me a bit confused about how some things happen. Still, it is a good style, a very interesting style. Now, I don't really remember how the movie went about on this part. I don't really remember how the movie went about on this part. Because I watched it, I think I watched it maybe twice even, but... but I don't really remember much of it. I think I need to do a rewatch just to compare if... because I kind of heard that the movie is not that good, at least compared to like what they do with the book, because they add like a silly little romance story and things like that. What the fuck? Okay. Now, chapter 6. Also the frying pan into the fire. Bilbo had escaped the goblins, but he did not know where he was. He had lost cloak. Oops. He had lost hood, cloak, food, pony, his buttons, and his friends. He wandered on and on, till the sun began to sink westwards, behind the mountains. Their shadows fell across Bilbo's path, and he looked back. Then he looked forward and could see before him only ridges and slopes, falling towards lowlands and plains glimpsed occasionally between the trees. Good heavens, he exclaimed. I seem to have got right to the other side of the misty mountains, right to the edge of the land beyond. Ran, oh, where can Gandalf and the dwarves have got you? I only hope to goodness they are not still back there in the power of the goblins. He still wandered on, out of the little high valley, over its edge, and down the slopes beyond. While all the while... Oh my god. That's what with these spam calls. I'm getting like very harassed by spam calls lately. It is frustrating, to say the least. Yeah. Where are we even honestly? Kinda lost myself. He still wandered on, out of the little high valley, over its edge, and down the slopes beyond. All the while, a very uncomfortable thought was growing inside him. He wondered whether he ought not, now he had the magic ring, to go back into the horrible, horrible tunnels and look for his friends. He had just made up his mind that it was his duty, that he must turn back, and very miserable he felt about it when he heard voices. He stopped and listened. It did not sound like goblins, so he crept forward carefully. He was on a stony path winding downwards, with a rocky wall on the left hand. Second. Shit, almost. It was on a stony path winding downwards, with a rocky wall on the left hand. On the other side, the ground sloped away, and there were dells below the level of the path, overhung with bushes and low trees. In one of these dells, under the bushes, people were talking. He crept still nearer, and suddenly he saw peering between two big boulders a head with a red hood on. It was Bali, doing look out. He could have clapped and shouted for joy, but he did not. He had still got the ring on, for fear of meeting something unexpected and unpleasant, and he saw that Balin was looking straight at him without noticing. Give them all a surprise, he thought, as he crawled into the bushes at the edge of the dell. Gandalf was arguing with the dwarves. They were discussing all that had happened to them in the tunnels, and wondering and debating what they were to do now. The dwarves were grumbling, and Gandalf was saying that they could not possibly go on with their journey, leaving Mr. Baggins in the hands of the goblins, without to find out if he was alive or dead, and without trying to rescue him. After all, he's my friend, said the wizard, and not a bad little chap. I feel responsible for him. I wish to goodness you had not lost him. The dwarves wanted to know why he had ever been brought at all, why he could not stick to his friends and come along with them, and why the wizard had not chosen someone with more sense. He has been more trouble than you so far, said one. If we got to go back now into those abominable tunnels to look for him, then drat him, I say. Gandalf answered angrily. I brought him and I don't bring things that are of no use. Either you help me to look for him, or I go and leave you here to get out of the mess as best as you can yourselves. If you can only find him again, you will thank me before all is over. Whatever did you want to go and drop him for, Dory? You would have dropped him, said Dory, if a goblin had suddenly grabbed your leg from behind in the dark, ripped up your feet, and kicked you in the back. Then why did you pick him up again? Good heavens, can you ask? Goblins fighting and biting in the dark, everybody falling over bodies and hitting one another. You nearly chopped off my head with Glamdring. Thorin was stabbing here and there everywhere with Archrist. All of a sudden, you gave one of your blinding flashes and saw the goblins running back yelping. You shouted, "Follow me, everybody!" and everyone ought to have followed. We thought everyone had. There was no time to count, as you know quite well, till we had dashed through the gate guards and out of the lower door, helter-skelter down here. And here we are, without the burglar. Confusticate him. And here's the burglar, said Bilbo, stepping down into the middle of them and slipping off the ring. Bless me, how they jumped! And they shouted with surprise and delight. Gandalf was astonished as any of them, but probably more pleased than all the others. He called to Balin and told him what he thought of a lookout man who let people walk right into them like that without warning. It is a fact that Bilbo's reputation went up a very great deal with the dwarves after this. If they had still doubted that he was really a first-class burglar, in spite of Gandalf's words, they doubted no longer. Balin was the most puzzled of all, but everyone said it was a very clever bit of work. Indeed, Bilbo was so pleased with her praise that he just chuckled inside and said nothing whatever about the ring. And when they asked him how he did it, he said, "Oh, just crept along, you know, very carefully and quietly." Well, it is the first time that even a mouse has crept along carefully and quietly under my very nose and not been spotted, said Balin. And I take off my hood to you, which he did. Balin, at your service, said he. Your servant, Mr. Baggins, said Bilbo. Then they wanted to know all about his adventures after they had lost him, and he sat down and told them everything, except about finding the ring. Not just now, he thought. They are particularly interested in the riddle competition, and shuddered most appreciatively at his description of Gollum. And then I couldn't think of any other question with him sitting beside me in the Bilbo. So I said, "What's in my pocket?" And he couldn't guess in 3 goes, so I said, "What about your promise? Show me the way out." Well, he came at me to kill me, and I ran and fell over, and he missed me in the dark. Then I followed him, because I heard him talking to himself. He thought I really knew the way out, and so he was making for it. And then he sat down in the entrance, and I could not get by, so I jumped over him and escaped, and ran down to the gate. What about the guards, they asked. Weren't there any? Oh yes, lots of them, but I dodged them. I got stuck in the door, which was only open a crack, then lost lots of buttons, he said, hardly looking at his torn coat. But I squeezed through all right, and here I am. The dwarves looked at him with quite a new respect when he talked about dodging guards, jumping over Gollum, and squeezing though as if it was not very difficult or very alarming. What did I tell you? Said Gandalf, laughing. Mr. Baggins has more about him than you guessed. He gave Bilbo a queer look from under his bushy eyebrows as he said this, and the Hobbit wondered if he guessed the part of his tale that he had left out. Then he had questions of his own to ask, for Gandalf had explained it all by now to the dwarves. Bilbo had not heard it. He wanted to know how the wizard had turned up again, and where they had all got to now. The wizard, to tell the truth, never minded explaining his cleverness more than once. So now he told Bilbo that both he and Aragorn has been well aware of the presence of evil goblins in that part of the mountain. But their main gate used to come out on a different path, one more easy to travel by, so that they often caught people benighted near their gates. Evidently, people had given up going that way, and the goblins must have opened the new entrance at the top of the pass the dwarves had taken quite recently, because it had been found quite safe up until now. I must see if I can find more or less decent giant to block it up again, said Gandalf, or soon there will be no getting over the mountains at all. As soon as Gandalf had heard Bilbo's yell, he realized that what had happened. In the flash, which killed the goblins that were grabbing him, he had nipped inside the crack just as he snapped to. He followed after the divers and prisoners right to the edge of the Great Hall, and then he sat down and worked up the best magic he could in the shadows. Very ticklish business it was, he said. Touch and go. But, of course, Gandalf had made special duty of bewitchments with fire and lights. Even the Hobbit had never forgotten the magic fireworks at all Took's Midsummer's Eve parties, as you remember. The rest we all know, except that Gandalf knew all about the back door of the goblins called the Lower Gate, where Bilbo lost his button. As a matter of fact, it was well known to anybody who was acquainted with this part of the mountain. But it took a wizard to keep his head in the tunnels and guide them in the right direction. They made the gates ages ago, he said, partly for a way to escape, if they needed one, partly as a way out into the lands beyond, where they still come in the dark and do great damage. They guard it always, and no one has ever managed to block it up. They'll guard it doubly after this, he laughed. All the others laughed too. After all, they had lost a good deal, but they had killed the great goblin, and great many other besides, and they had all escaped. So they might be said to have had the best of it so far. But the wizard called them to their senses. We must be getting on at once. Now, we are a little rested, he said. They'll be out after us in hundreds when night comes on, and already shadows are lengthening. They can smell our footsteps for hours and hours after we passed. We must be miles on before dusk. There'll be a bit of moon if it keeps fine, and that is lucky. Not to mind the moon much, but it'll give us a little light to steer by. Oh yes, he said in answer to more questions from the Hobbit. You lose track of time inside the Goblin Tunnel. Today is Thursday, and it was Monday night or Tuesday morning that we were captured. We have gone miles and miles and come right down through the heart of the mountains, and are now on the other side. Quite a shortcut. But we are not at the point to which our paths would have brought us. We are too far to the north and have some awkward country ahead, and we're still pretty high up. Let's get on. I'm dreadfully hungry, groaned Bilbo, was suddenly aware that he had not a meal since the night before the night last. Just think of that for a hobbit. Stomach felt all empty and loose, and his legs all wobbly now that the excitement was over. Can't help it, said Gandalf. Unless you like to go back and ask the goblins nicely to let you have your pony back on your luggage. No, thank you, said Bilbo. Very well then. We must just tighten our belts and trudge on, or we shall be made into supper, and that will be much worse than having none ourselves. As they went on, Bilbo looked from side to side for something to eat. The blackberries were still only flower, and of course there were no nuts, not even hawthorn berries. He nibbled a bit of sorrel, and he drank from a small mountain stream across the path, and he ate 3 wild strawberries that he found on its bank, but it was not much good. They still went on and on, the rough path disappeared, the bushes and the long grasses between the boulders, the patches of grabbed crop turf, the thyme and sage and the marjoram, and the yellow roxes all vanished, and they found themselves at the top of a wide, steep slope of fallen stones, the remains of a landslide. When they began to go down, those rubbish and small pebbles rolled away from their feet. Two larger bits of split stone went clattering down and started up the pieces below them, glittering and rolling. And lumps of rock were disturbed and bounced off, crashing down with a dust and a noise. For long, the whole slope above them and below them seemed on the move, and they were sliding away, huddled all together in a fearful confusion of slipping, rattling, crackling slabs on stones. It was the trees at the bottom that saved them. They slid into the edge of a climbing wood of pines, and here stood right up this mountain slope from the deeper, darker forests of the valleys below. Some caught hold of the tree trunks and swung themselves into lower branches. Some, like the little Hobbit, got behind a tree to shelter from the onslaught of the rocks. Soon the danger was over. The slide had stopped, and the last faint crashes could be heard as the largest of the disturbed stones went abounding and spinning among the black pine roofs far below. Hold on a minute. I'll just need a quick little... Another thing, a lot of interruptions today. I need to do a quick thing on the side over here. Alright, the problems of living in a house with other people. That sometimes you just can't not avoid being interrupted. I think now should be fine, I guess. No, we have like 15 minutes, so... Not a lot left before the end of the stream. No. Where was I? Kind of forgot what I was reading over here. They still went on and on. The rough path disappeared. The bushes and the long grasses between the boulders, the patches of rabbit cropped turf, the thyme and the sage and the marjoram, and the yellow rocks all vanished. They found themselves at the top of a wide, steep slope of falling stones, the remains of a landslide. went beginning to go down thus. Rubbish and small pebbles rolled away from their feet. Soon largest bits of split stone went clattering down. Started all the pieces below them, glittering and rolling. Thin lumps of rock were disturbed and bounced off, crashing down with a dust and a noise. Before long, the whole slope above them and below them seemed on the move, and they were sliding away, huddled all together, in a fearful confusion of slipping, rattling, cracking slabs and stones. It was the trees at the bottom that saved them. They slid into the edge of a climbing wood of pines that here stood right up the mountain slope, from the deeper, darker forests of the valleys below. Some caught hold of the tree trunks and swung themselves into lower branches. Some, like the little hobbit, got behind a tree to shelter from the onslaught of the rocks. Soon the danger was over. The slide had stopped, and the last faint crashes could be heard as the largest of the disturbed stones went bounding and spinning among the bracken and the pine roots far below. "Well, that has got us on a bit," said Gandalf, "and even goblins tracking us will have a job to come down here quietly." "I dare say," grumbled Brombor, "but they'll find it difficult to send stones bouncing down on our heads." The dwarves and Bilbo were feeling far from happy and were rubbing their bruised and damaged legs and feet. "Nonsense! We're going to turn aside here out of the path of the slide. We must be quick. Look at the light." The sun had long gone behind the mountains. Already the shadows were deepening about them, so far away through the trees and over the black tops of those growing lower down, they could still see the evening lights on the plains beyond. They limped along now as fast as they were able, down the gentle slopes of a pine forest in a slanting path, leading steadily southward. At times they were pushing through a sea of bracken, with tall fronds rising right above the hobbit's head. At times they were marching along quiet over a floor of pine needles, and all the while the forest gloom got heavier and the forest silence deeper. There was no wind that evening to bring even a sea sighing through the branches of the trees. "Must we go any further?" asked Bilbo, when it was so dark that he could only see Thorin's beard wagging beside him, and so quiet that he could hear the dwarves breathing like an owl noise. "My toes are all bruised and bent, and my legs ache, and my stomach is wagging like an empty sack." "A bit further," said Gandalf. After what seemed ages, further they came suddenly to an opening where no trees grew. The moon was up and was shining into the clearing. Somehow it struck all of them as not at all a nice place, although there was nothing around to see. All of a sudden, they heard a howl away downhill, a long shuddering howl. It was answered by another away to the right, and a good deal nearer to them, then by another, not far away to the left. It was wolves howling at the moon, wolves gathering together. There are no wolves living near Miss Baggins' hole at home, but he knew that noise. He had it described to him often and often tales. One of his elder cousins, on the Took side, who had been a great traveler, used to imitate it to frighten him. To hear it out in the forest under the moon was too much for Bilbo. Even magic rings are not much use against wolves, especially against the evil packs that live under the shadow of the goblin-infested mountain, over the edge of the wild, on the borders of the unknown. Wolves of that sort smell keener than goblins, and do not need to see you to catch you. "What shall we do? What shall we do?" he cried. "Escaping goblins to be caught by wolves," he said, and it came a proverb, so we now say, out of the frying pan into the fire, in the same sort of uncomfortable situations. "Up the trees, quick!" cried Gandalf, and they ran to the trees at the edge of the glade, hunting for those that had branches fairly low or slender enough to swarm it up. They found them as quick as ever they could, you can guess, and up they went as high as ever they could trust the branches. You'd have laughed from a safe distance. You had seen the dwarves sitting up in the trees with their beards dangling down, like old gentlemen gone cracked and playing at being toys. Billy and Kiki. Billy and Killy were at the top of a tall large, like an enormous Christmas tree. Dory, Nori, Ori, Oi, and Gloin were more comfortable in a huge pine with regular branches sticking out at intervals like the spokes of a wheel. Before Beaufort, Bombo, and Thorin were in another. Dwelling and Valley had swarmed up a tall, slender fir with a few branches and were trying to find a place to sit in the greenery of the topmost boughs. Gandalf, who was a good deal taller than the others, had found a tree into which they could not climb, a large pine standing at the very edge of the glade. He was quite hidden in its boughs. But you could see his eyes gleaming in the moon as he peered out. And Bilbo, he could not get into any tree and was scuttling about from trunk to trunk like a rabbit that has lost its hole and has a dog after him. "You've left the burger behind again," said Nori to Dory, looking behind. "I can't be always carrying burgers on my back," said Dory. "Oh, tunnels and up, please. What do you think I am, a porter?" "You'll be bitten if you don't do something," said Dory. For there were howls all around him now, getting nearer and nearer. "Dory!" he called for Dory. Was lowest down in the easiest tree. "Be quick and give Mr. Baggins a hand up." Dory was really a decent fellow in spite of his grumbling. Poor Bilbo could not reach his hand even when he climbed down to the bottom branch and hung his arm down as far as ever he could. So Dory actually climbed out of the tree and let Bilbo scramble up and stand on his back. Just at that moment, wolves trotted howling into the clearing. All of a sudden, there were hordes of eyes looking at them. Still, Dory did not let Bilbo down. He waited till he had clambered off his shoulders into the branches, and then he jumped for the branches himself. Only just in time. A wolf snapped at his cloak as he swung up and nearly got him. In a minute, there was a whole pack of them yelping all around the tree and leaping up at the trunk with eyes blazing and tongues hanging out. But even the wild wargs, for so the evil wolves over the edge of the wild were named, cannot climb trees. For a time they were safe. Luckily, it was warm and not windy. Trees are not very comfortable sitting for long at any time, but in the cold and the wind, with wolves all around below waiting for you, they can be perfectly miserable places. This glade in the ring of trees was evidently a meeting place of the wolves. More and more kept coming in. They left guards at the foot of the tree in which Dory and Bilbo were, and then went snuffing about till they had smelt out every tree that had anyone in it. These they guarded too, while all the rest, hundreds and hundreds it seemed, went and sat in a great circle in the glade, and in the middle of the circle was a great grey wolf. He spoke to them in a dreadful language of the wargs. Gandalf understood it, Bilbo did not, but it sounded terrible to him, and as if all their talk was about cruel and wicked things, as it was. Every now and then, all the wargs in the circle would answer the great chief altogether, and the dreadful clamor almost made a hobbit fall out of his pine tree. I will tell you what Gandalf heard, though Bilbo did not understand it. The wargs and the goblins often helped one another in their wicked deeds. Goblins do not usually venture very far from the mountains, unless they are driven out and are looking for new homes, or marching to war, which I am glad to say has not happened for a long while. But in those days, they sometimes used to go on raids, especially to get food or slaves to work for them. Then they often got the wargs to help share the plunder with them. Sometimes they rode on wolves like men do on horses. Now it seemed that a great goblin raid had been planned for that very night. The wargs had come to meet the goblins, and the goblins were late. The reason, no doubt, was the death of the great goblin, and now the excitement caused by the dwarves and Bilbo and the wizard, for whom they were probably still hunting. In spite of the dangers of this far land, bold men had of late been making their way back into it from the south, cutting down trees and building themselves places to live in among the more pleasant woods in the valleys and along the river shores. There were many of them, and they were brave and well armed, and even the wargs dared not attack them, if there were many together, or in the bright day. But now they had planned with the goblins to come by night upon some of the villages nearest to the mountains. If their plan had been carried out, there would have been no one left there next day. All would have been killed except a few the goblins kept from the wolves and carried back as prisoners to their caves. This was a dreadful thought to listen to, not only because of the brave woodmen and their wives and children, but also because of the danger which now threatened Gandalf and his friends. The wargs were angry and puzzled at finding them here in their very meeting place. They thought they were friends of the woodmen, and were come to spy on them, and would take news of their plans down into the valleys, and then the goblins and the wolves would have to fight a terrible battle instead of capturing prisoners, and devouring people wake suddenly from their sleep. So the wargs had no intention of going away and let the people up the trees escape. At any rate, not until morning. And long before that, they said, goblin soldiers will be coming down from the mountains, and goblins can climb trees or cut them down. Now you can understand why Gandalf, listening to their growling and yelping, began to be dreadfully afraid. Wizard though he was, and to feel that they were in a very bad place, and not yet escaped at all. All the same, he was not going to let them have it all their own way. Though he could not do very much, stuck up in a tall tree with wolves all around, on the ground below. He gathered the huge pine cones from the branches of the tree. Then he set one alight with bright blue fire, and threw it whizzing down among the circle of the wolves. He struck one on the back, and immediately his shaggy coat caught fire, and he was leaping to and fro, yelping horribly. Then another came, and another, one in blue flames, one in red, another in green. They burst on the ground in the middle of the circle and went off in colorless sparks and smoke. A especially large one hit the chief wolf on the nose, and he leapt in the air 10 feet and then rushed around and round the circle, biting and sniping even at the other wolves in his anger and fright. The dwarves and Bilbo shouted and cheered. The rage of the wolves was terrible to see, and the commotion they made filled all the forest. Wolves are afraid of fire at all times, but this was a most horrible and uncanny fire. If a spark got in their coats, it stuck and burned into them, and unless they rolled over quick, they were soon all in flames. Very soon, all about the glade, wolves were rolling over and over to put out the sparks on their backs, while those that were burning were running about, howling and setting others alight. Till their own friends chased them away, and they fled off down the slopes, crying and yammering and looking for wonder. Oh, there is a lot until the end of this chapter. How much should I read? There's like 3 minutes left, and I have to go. What is all this uproar in the forest tonight? Said the Lord of the Eagles. He was sitting, black in the moonlight, on top of a lonely pinnacle of rock at the eastern edge of the mountain. I hear wolves' voices. Are the goblins at mischief in the woods? He swept up into the air, and immediately 2 of his guards from the rocks at either hand leaped up to follow him. They circled up in the sky, and looked down upon the ring of the worlds, a tiny spot far, far below. But eagles have keen eyes and can see small things at a great distance. The Lord of the Eagles of the Misty Mountains had eyes that could look at the sun unblinking, and could see a rabbit moving on the ground a mile below, even in the moonlight. So though he could not see the people in the trees, he could make out the commotion among the wolves, and see the tiny flashes of fire, and hear the howling and yelping come up faint from far beneath him. Also, he could see the glint of the moon on goblin spears and helmets, as long lines of wicked folk crept down the hillsides from their gate and wound into the wood. Eagles are not kindly birds, some are cowardly and cruel, but the ancient race of the northern mountains were the greatest of all birds. They were proud and strong and noble-hearted. They did not love goblins, or fear them. When they took any notice of them at all, which was seldom, for they did not eat such creatures, they swooped on them and drove them shrieking back to the caves, and stopped whatever wickedness they were doing. The goblins hated the eagles and feared them, but could not reach their lofty seats, or drive them from their mountains. Tonight, the Lord of the Eagles was filled with curiosity to know what was afoot. So he summoned many other eagles to him, and they flew away from the mountains. And slowly circling ever round and round they came, down, 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 towards the ring of the wolves and the meeting place of the goblins. A very good thing too. Dreadful things had been going on down there. The wolves that had caught fire and fled into the forest had set it alight in several places. It was high summer, and on the eastern side of the mountains there had been little rain for some time. Yellowing bracken, fallen branches, deep piled pine needles, and here and there dead trees were soon in flames. All around the clearing of the works fire was leaping, but the wolf guards did not leave the trees. Maddening and angry they were, leaping and howling round the trunks, and cursing the dwarves in their horrible language, with their tongues hanging out, and the eyes shining as red and fierce as the flames. Then suddenly, goblins came up running and yelling. They thought a battle with the woodmen was going on, but they soon learned what had really happened. Some of them actually sat down and laughed. Others waved their spears and clashed the shafts against their shields. Goblins are not afraid of fire, and they too had a plan which seemed to them most amusing. Some got all the wolves together in a pack, some stuck fern and bushwood around the tree trunks, others rushed down and stamped and beat and stamped until all the flames were put out. But they need not put out the fire nearest to the trees where the dwarves were. That fire they fed with leaves and dead branches and bracken. Soon they had a ring of smoke and flame all around the dwarves, a ring which they kept from spreading outwards. But they closed slowly into the running fire, was licking the fuel pile under the trees. Smoke was in Bilbo's eyes, he could feel the heat of the flames, and through the rick he could see the goblins dancing round and round in a circle, like people round a midsummer bonfire. Outside the ring of dancing warriors with spears and axes stood the wolves at a respectful distance, watching and waiting. He could hear the goblins beginning a horrible song. Sing buzzing, fly through trees, their feathers were funny in a fierce breeze, but funny little birds, they had no wings. Oh, what should we do with the funny little things? Dress them alive or steal them in a pot, fry them, boil and eat them hot. Then they stopped and shouted, fly away, little birds, fly away if you can. Come down, little bird, will you get them rusted in your necks? Sing, sing, little birds, why don't you sing? Go away, little boys, shouted Gandalf in answer. It isn't bird nesting time. Also, naughty little boys that play with fire get punished, he said to make them angry, and to show them he was not frightened of them, though of course the wizard was. Wizard though he was. But they took no notice, and they went on singing. Burn, burn tree and fir, cheer and scorch a frizzling torch, to light the night for our delight, yeah hey! Bacon, toast and fry and roast and two birds blaze and eyes glaze, two hearts smells and skins cracks, fat melts and bones black, in cinders lie beneath the sky, so dwarfs shall die. And light the night for our delight, yeah hey, yeah Harry, hey, yeah ho! And with that, yeah ho! The flames were under Gandalf's tree. In a moment, he spread to the others. The bark caught fire, the lower branches cracked. Then Gandalf climbed to the top of his tree. The sudden splendor flashed from his wand like lightning as he got ready to spring down from one high, right among the spears of the goblins. That would have been the end of him, though he would probably have killed many of them as he came hurtling down like a thunderbolt. But he never leaped. Just at that moment, the Lord of the Wiggles swept down from above, seized him in his talons, and he was gone. Hello, Lapis. I think it's time for me to... Oh man, there's just a little bit. There's just a little bit before the end of the chapter. But I'm really get tired now. I'm really get tired and I need to make dinner. Hello, Lapis, my dearest. How are you doing? You dancing? But now I actually need to finish and rate somebody now. It strained my throat. I'm tired. Yeah, I should have started right on time so I could end right on time, because this dinner takes a while to make. Tired, man. Indeed tired. Had a long session. It's very good, very pleasant, very interesting, very nice to do, but it's tiring. My throat is starting to become irritated from making voices. I had to make Gollum accent, the Gollum voice, for a while now, so making Gollum speak was the hardest for a while. Now, how do we raid? I need to quickly look for some. Yeah, if I keep going, I'm gonna get a headache too. How do we raid? There are a few choices, and this is always it's quite the decision. Who to raid? Honestly, just want to raid Digby. Fuck it, let's raid Digby. He's playing War Thunder. Digby is always cool to raid. And I need to raid and run, so I can't really don't want to really raid someone new because I can't really talk. So, okay. Now, let's see for schedule. For schedule, I have tomorrow Lapis Thursday. We're gonna start a little bit later than the way we started today. We're gonna be playing Kirby's Return to Dreamland for the Wii. First time that I'm emulating on stream something from the Wii. I never actually finished any game from the Wii because my computer was always kind of bad. Now it's a little bit better, so I hope I can actually do it. I hope I can actually do it. It should not have like any problems aside from a slowdown here and there. Because the Wii, yeah, the thing that makes the Wii worse is that it runs at 60 FPS. So unless your computer is really good, you're not gonna really run it at like a maximum speed. It's gonna keep slowing down and bouncing up and down. So that's why it's more finicky than other games which run at like 30, other consoles which run at 30. It takes a little bit more, even though the Wii is not that strong. And then Saturday we have Warcraft 3, Frozen Throne, continuing the campaign that I just started. And I don't really remember much of the campaign, so I'm actually eager to play it. And then Sunday Against the Storm, because of course we need to play Against the Storm one day a week. And why not on a comfy Sunday? Comfy chill Sunday, as it's starting to, as fall is starting to become stronger over here. But that's pretty much it for my schedule. I will continue this next week. I don't think I'm gonna stop, even if I'm like kind of tired. I don't really want to stop reading this because it's really pleasant. It's really pleasant. I enjoy this a lot. It's really well written, though the style can be. Its style is a bit thick. How do I even describe it? I think it's special. How do I even describe the style? Like every word is whimsical. That's kind of thing that gets a bit difficult. Every word is every phrase, every sentence is.
Ah, my darling Lupus Windbloom, a tale of adventure and wonder you seek. Let me paint the words of Tolkien's The Hobbit in a tapestry of enchantment for you to savor.
Oh, that's it. She's not actually good. That's as much as she can go. Unless you ask for the first paragraph or something. She's not actually gonna go that much longer. What the fuck? Yeah, that's all you're gonna get, Lapis. That's all you're gonna get. I don't think she. Yeah, not only is it gonna blow up her limit. She only her cute little brain only has like a small limit for the amount of things you can say. So unless you ask like paragraph for paragraph, she's not gonna retell you everything. You need to be very. You need to know how to handle her. It takes a special hand to handle a woman like Gremory. I also need to look for different books. I need to look for different books to read after I finish this one because it's a lot more pleasant than studying. Like I kind of like finish my studies that I need. Maybe I could study some things, but I don't really need to read more books to study. So I guess I'll continue looking for pleasant books to read after I finish this one. It might take longer because The Hobbit's like a small book. I need to look for like short books. I can't really go for something really too thick. Unfortunately, we're about flat books over here, no thickness. No thickness allowed. No thick curvy book. But I think that's it. Just begin the raid. Here's your raid message. And take care of your waifus. Take care of your husbandos. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye. Grammy's gonna start the milking now. Good luck. Have fun.